Enjoy our podcast? Go to surfingthetsunami.com to discover an amazing wisdom and wellness platform designed to take ancient ideas down to street level with practical tools and takeaways delivered by some of the world's greatest thinkers, authors, and innovators. Sync up with a growing community of like-minded people from around the world on a journey to self-awareness, mindfulness, and fulfilling their dreams. The WisdomFeed Plus membership is a perfect place to take your next steps on your personalized success path to a happier and healthier life. You can't stop the waves, but you can learn how to surf. Go to surfingthetsunami.com today.
So once you learn the foundational skills, it's just like the most wonderful thing about this is that it's a skill. Like deep resilience is a skill. Like learning to ride a bike or learning to drive a car is a skill. You just learn the foundational tools, you practice them for a while, and then they become second nature. So to learn any skill, you need to do the 3 C's. You need the correct skills, and then you need to practice them somewhat consistently. And you need to do that continuously for a time.
Welcome back to the StreetSmart Wisdom Podcast. I am Steve Stein, the founder of Better Listen and WisdomFeed Plus. For 4 decades, my mission has been to find and publish the most inspirational and evidence-based thinkers in the world. We've sold more than 1 million downloads of wellness audiobooks over the years, so you can rest assured if it is on the StreetSmart Wisdom Podcast or WisdomFeed Plus, it is legit and carefully vetted. Welcome, everyone. My name is Steve Stein. I'm the founder of Better Listen and WisdomFeed.com. And in this instance, I'm the host of the StreetSmart Wisdom Podcast. And today is a very special recording of that podcast. We have some people watching the recording and people in the Zoom room. So welcome, everyone. And today we have a special guest on a special topic, and it's Melli O'Brien. And Melli has her new book coming out, Deep Resilience, a 4-step journey to unshakable inner strength. So welcome, everyone. Welcome, Melli. Melli, maybe you could just give a brief introduction of who you are and what's happening.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me here, and thanks everyone that's here live, because we did have a different time, as you said, that we were going to do this, and I had a really big storm during that time, and my Starlink actually ended up going down, so it's lucky we didn't try that one. So I am the co-founder of Mindfulness.com and an educator and coach in the mental health space. I've been kind of on the front lines of mental health education and training for almost 20 years now. Lots of that happening as a mindfulness teacher, and some of that happening in just teaching mental resilience skills to folks. And I've had the honor and pleasure of helping over 1 million people around the world. And I think what led me to kind of just a segue into why I'm doing this book now and how I sort of ended up where I am now is that over that time I began to see patterns. You know, when you work with so many people over time, you start to see patterns. And I started to see a pattern that there were specific things that in the face of adversity, there is a specific pattern that people tend to fall into in the face of adversity. So what I'm really passionate about now, especially in the context of the world we're living in that has so much uncertainty, so much challenge, so much change, is to kind of condense down a framework for us to stay as strong and wise and loving and healthy as we can in the face of change and adversity. So that's what I'm up to.
Wow. Excellent. So I have kind of a basic question to start. So resilience is so necessary in these. We've done some work with Alan Watts, who we're fortunate to distribute some of his works, and I have two teenagers, and one of the things that he says is the world is wiggly.
Yeah, I love that.
So the world is wiggly and you need resilience. And so my first question is, well, what's the difference between resilience and deep resilience?
Mm. So the difference between what we call resilience, like to me, the reason why I'm teasing that apart a little bit is because what I am seeing as a huge problem in the way that we're approaching mental health in general, because we kind of think of like partially one of the problems I'm seeing is that we're seeing there's kind of like spiritual teachings over here, and then there's kind of general mental health education over here. That's what I've even been, I'm either teaching mindfulness over here sometimes, and then sometimes I'm teaching resilience over here. That is broken. That isn't working. So for human beings to stay resilient, we need to be mentally strong, right? We need the ability to regulate our thoughts in skillful ways. We need to be emotionally strong. We need the ability to handle our emotions in ways that are healthy and helpful. And we need to be wise, right? We need wisdom. It's not a luxury, it's a necessity. I think at the end of David Attenborough's, he made a documentary a little while ago, and I can't remember what it was called, but he was kind of showcasing like what's the state of the world today. It's a hard documentary to watch. At the end of it, his final quote was, if human beings are going to survive, we're going to need more than intelligence. We're going to need wisdom. And, another quote that comes to mind to kind of bring this home for people is, Mark Manson, really cool. I love Mark Manson. He's a really cool personal development speaker and writer. And I think I saw a quote from him. I was going to see if I can get this right. Mark, I apologize if you ever watch this, if I don't get it perfect. But he said, wisdom without intelligence, you can still live a pretty simple and contented life, probably live in pretty much balance and harmony. Intelligence without wisdom is a special and dangerous form of stupidity.
What?
Like what he's saying is like, if you have intelligence, if human beings develop their intelligence, and in this includes emotional intelligence, you can do all kinds of cool things with that intelligence, right? But if you don't have wisdom and you're wielding that intelligence, you're probably going to end up doing more harm than good. It's a special and dangerous, he's saying, like form of stupidity. Like it's like a kitchen knife, right? You have a kitchen knife. That's an amazing tool. With that, you could really hurt somebody. With that, you could make a really beautiful meal for somebody, right? So what we're doing in our culture at the moment is we're developing a lot of intelligence, and we're often chronically underdeveloped in wisdom, which is why what you're doing is so awesome. So deep resilience is about being mentally strong, emotionally strong, and also what I might call spiritual strength or wisdom. So that's the difference. We want to be able to regulate our thoughts in skillful ways, regulate our emotions in healthy and helpful ways, and we want to be able to act with awareness and according to our values, even when that's really hard to do. So I want to use that intelligence in ways that help humanity and life flourish and be balanced and do well.
Got it. So one of the things at WisdomFeed we try to do is take ancient ideas down to street level, and I think that's really what your book is. is taking these practices, timeless practices, but applying them to modern life or to real life situations. So what are some of your either personal situations or examples from the book that kind of, illustrate that or something like that?
Yeah. So I guess when I say over time in working with a lot of people, I kind of saw patterns. What I aim to do with this book, so the book is called Deep Resilience. It actually walks you through what I call the deep resilience method, which I've been teaching for some time. And it's 4 skills. It's a four-part path that teaches you to so the 4 things are, so this is the pattern that I have seen, that if we can get these 4 things right, then we have really, really optimal mental well-being. So those 4 things are, we need to be able to recognize and regulate our thoughts and emotions in skillful ways. And the recognize part's in there very deliberately. It's not just regulate. It's like a lot of this is just really understanding human nature, understanding how our mind works. A little bit like taming a horse. My Uncle Jeff used to tame horses, and you would, once you understand the patterns, once you understand how something works really well, regulate, the word regulate means to bring into balance. So once we really understand the mind really well, it becomes a lot easier to bring that into harmony and balance. So recognize and regulate thoughts and emotions. I is for inhabit, the present moment, which we know in our culture as mindfulness, the ability to inhabit the present moment. It's mindfulness. S is for stay connected to your values. And E is for take empowered action that's guided by awareness and by your values. So the first step has a lot to do with unwinding a lot of the stuff that gets in the way of us being at our best. So it's unwinding suffering, unwinding stress, unwinding a lot of the patterns, that limiting beliefs and things that kind of keep us stuck in fear and stress and overwhelm. And the steps 2, 3, and 4 are about really connecting deeply with the deepest strengths and the highest potentials in human nature, and being able to act from that strength rather than, or respond from that strength to the world and to what's happening in your life, rather than reacting in ways that may not serve us. So it's an acronym, RISE, for rise. So we're going to rise to our challenges rather than being so thrown around by them.
And it sounds like it's also a sustainable model. So it seems, just hearing you talk about it, it just sounds very deliberate and calming.
Yeah. What I'm finding when I'm working with people, the thing that I am enjoying the most about the deep resilience method is, so once you learn the foundational skills, it's just like, the most wonderful thing about this is that it's a skill. Like deep resilience is a skill, like learning to ride a bike or learning to drive a car is a skill. You just learn the foundational tools, you practice them for a while, and then they become second nature. So to learn any skill, you need to do the 3 C's. You need the correct skills, and then you need to practice them somewhat consistently. And you need to do that continuously for a time, right? So when you're learning to drive a car, someone has to teach you the correct road rules
Mm-hmm.
and they have to teach you the right way to change the gears and to do the pedals. Like, you need a competent guide. Then all you need to do then is just practice them for a while, and for a length of time that's required until the neural wiring goes in, such that most of us can ride a bike now without thinking about it. We can drive a car without thinking about it. So what I've done is tried to distill the best evidence-based skills, condensed them down and simplified and made them very, very practical and deployable. And so that people can just do that with me, is just learn the steps of the dance, then repeat them for a period of time until they become really integrated and just becomes a way of being. So yeah, in that way, basically what we end up doing is that when adversity hits, or whether it's just a late train or whether it's a divorce, there's a big scale of adversity, right? It can be little things, it can be big things. We face adversities every day, little ones. Is that in that moment where you have a response that may not be ideal, that you can actually follow these 4 steps, like the steps of a dance. In that moment, you go RISE. Once you learn the steps of the dance, you kind of condition yourself so that every time adversity hits, instead of reacting in ways that make things worse, and including mental ways that make things worse, make you more stressed out, more angry, more hostile, more disempowered, what you end up doing is conditioning yourself to double down on strength and then respond from that strength. And that just becomes eventually much more of a habit. So that's the way I designed it, so that you can work through these steps of the dance and condition yourself in that way. Yeah. So yes, I've tried to make it as practical and simple and accessible as possible.
Not to put you on the spot, but I wonder if there's an exercise or something you can kind of put the listener, put me through, put us through, either now or at the end, whatever you think is more appropriate. But because we like to try to have things that people can actually do, so it's a little bit experiential. So we could do it at the end or something now if you're comfortable.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that one of the practices that we do, and I'll explain this a little bit, and then we can do just a short version of it. One of the things we do is a practice called anchoring. And the reason that we do this is because, so in the world we live in today, where there is quite a lot of challenge and change and uncertainty and also complexity coming at us, what is happening for most of us a lot of the time is each time little demand hits us or uncertainty hits us, our mind is wired in such a way that it just continuously kind of tips into a low-level stress response, overwhelm response, collapse response, and we kind of get stuck in this mode habitually, where we're just, like, to give you an example of this, according to the American Psychological Association, 75% of the population right now is so chronically stressed that they feel that it affects their ability to cope well in life, diminishes their ability to just function.
75%.
75% according to the American Psychological Association. So like that is, and 1 in 8 of us globally is so affected by our stress that we're tipping into mental health conditions like depression, anxiety, right? I think last time I looked, 11% of the population of the states, I'm in Australia, but I'm always looking at your stats. 11% of the population over the age of 14 is on some kind of medication for mental health disturbance.
11%, wow.
Yeah, so we're talking about like a lot of us feeling like we're constantly chronically tipping into ways of being that end up feeling like they're normal, but actually shouldn't be considered normal. Like we're not thriving, we're not flourishing. So one of the things that we do in my work that's one of the favorite practices, because it's very enjoyable and very helpful, is called anchoring. And like the acknowledgement here is, because we have this particular pattern that we fall into in the face of adversity, if you're going through adversity, one of the first things we want to do is we actually want to anchor you back into the states of strength inside of you. We want to anchor you back into presence, first of all. We also want to anchor you back into the qualities of being that are associated with our deeper nature, the qualities of being like courage, like love, like clarity. Anyone here who maybe practices mindfulness a bit, or has had certain experiences in their life, like times when you weren't stressed and you suddenly feel, maybe you're alone in nature, suddenly you feel more calm. Suddenly you might have a higher perspective on your situation that you didn't have before. You know how you have those, sometimes you get still inside and you're like, oh, you know what? I actually don't even want to be in this job anymore. Like, this isn't according to my values. This is not me. You know, so there's aspects of our deeper nature when we get still inside and we get more and more disconnected from them in daily life. So what we do with anchoring practice is we actually deliberately cultivate those states. This is something that's been done in Buddhism, in Hinduism, it's not new. Neuroscientists recommend doing this as well to help us like lay down new neural pathways of living in those states.
So how is that different than like just doing a meditation practice?
It's different because it is a type of meditation practice. So there's lots of different things that we, like in meditation, we may cultivate different things like loving kindness, or we might just be cultivating non-reactivity. Sometimes we focus on different aspects of mindfulness training. So here we're really deliberately embodying and intensifying and amplifying particular states of being, such as like calm or contentment. That makes sense. So we can give it a try, and you can.
Yeah, I can always use a little calm or contentment.
Yeah. Usually when we do this practice, it's actually done with a little bit of music. But we'll just take a few moments here, say like 5 minutes.
Sure.
3 to 5 minutes, and just give this a try and see how it feels.
And as we keep going, if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat and we'll get to them.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's just take a moment to kind of settle into a comfortable position. Just be here for a few minutes. And you can practice with eyes closed if you care to, but you can always feel free to just leave them open and have a soft gaze. And we'll just begin by taking a deep, slow, full breath in together. And as you breathe out, seeing if you can allow some of the tension or tightness that might be in the body to just kind of melt and soften a bit. Two more breaths like that in. Breathing out, softening tension in the jaw, shoulders, hands and belly. And one more time in. And out, a wave of relaxation rolling down from the crown of your head, down through the body to the tips of the toes. And then as you allow your breath to just kind of slip back into its natural rhythm and pace, but you don't need to control it in any way anymore. As you do that, just staying in touch with the breath for a moment and finding your center, feeling the breath, letting go of what's on the mind. It's nothing you have to figure out, nothing you have to solve. There's nothing you need to do. There's nowhere else you need to be but here. So just resting in the breath. Just this moment. Just this breath. And then just bringing to mind the feeling of calm. You might remember a time when you were calm, a time when you were perhaps standing at the edge of an ocean or a lake, or watching a sunrise or a sunset. Or maybe you're in bed on a Sunday morning. You might like to remember a moment of calm, or you might like to just imagine or evoke the feeling of calm. And almost like a soft light starting to glow in the center of your chest, feeling this soothing, peaceful, radiant energy just starting to flow out, almost like a rising sun in your heart, and the rays are starting to fill up the body, letting this feeling of calm and peace wash through your body and your being. How do you breathe when you feel calm? Breathe like that. Bathe in that calm. Feel calm flowing through every cell of your body, every fiber of your being. Really start to intensify that feeling of calm. Deep peace. Filling you and flooding every cell of your body. From the crown of your head to the tips of your toes and every finger. Just holding that calm and breathing with that. Feel the goodness of it, the strength of it. And then just saying to yourself mentally now, just this phrase, this calm is with me now. You might like to imagine like a jewel going into the center of your chest. Or you might like to imagine this calm kind of taking up residence in the cells of your body, or having some sense of taking this calm with you in body and being. And then just bringing awareness gently back to your breathing. Feeling the goodness and the strength of that calm still with you. When you're ready, you can gently open the eyes.
Yeah, that was great. That was really, really, really it wasn't just like a regular meditation. It was like you're trying to anchor it in our body. Is that part of the anchoring aspect of it, or?
Yeah, so that meditation combines positive neuroplasticity training, neurolinguistic programming, and mindfulness together. So in neurolinguistic programming, there's a practice called anchoring, sometimes called anchoring, sometimes it's called other things, where usually what we do in a longer practice is while you're in the peak of that state of calm, we have seven different strengths that we cycle through.
Okay.
I call them the seven strengths of the self. They're like qualities of our deeper nature. And we cycle through them. And every time we're in the peak of that state, I didn't do it today because we won't have time to sort of really develop the anchor. But we usually squeeze our right fist while that emotion is at its height. And then later on in your life, when you're having a hard moment, you can squeeze your right fist and access those feelings again. And it's very, very powerful. People often find that when they're feeling like, we've all had, by our age, Steve, you've been through a bit of adversity, right? We've been through stuff now, and in those moments, sometimes we don't feel so empowered. Hey, as sometimes we really lose touch with our wisdom. I'm like, myself included, like when stuff gets hard, like a lot of these practices are so wonderful, but when stuff gets hard, it's hard not to be reactive. It's hard not to feel disempowered. It's hard not to get lost in a flood of negative thinking.
Especially when we're wired for the negative thinking.
We are wired.
Because we're right back on the savannah looking for tigers and looking for what could go wrong next.
Exactly.
And that axiom, you are the combination of the five people you spend the most time with, kind of thing, or whatever the quote is, and if there's some of that going around, then it's even amplified more. So it's like, oh my God, how do I get through? So what does this tool do?
In those moments, it helps you to access it. First of all, right? So you are so right. You just made such a wonderful point, because you've been around this stuff for a long time, and like the thinking mind, or what we sometimes refer to as the ego, it has been conditioned by evolution to follow survival-based conditioned programming. So in the face of difficult stuff, it tips into, as I was saying in the beginning, a very, very typical and understandable, due to its conditioning, a very typical pattern for things that it does that I talk about a lot. But it tips into a specific pattern that makes us reactive, disempowered, stressed, and really foggy-headed and drained. So it's really hard. It's really hard to be at your best. So what anchoring practice does, the full practice, is first of all, just helps to settle that survival-based conditioning, which is so powerful. And it helps us to access and then act from what's deepest and truest and best in us. That's the goal of this practice. It takes a while. With a bit of repetition, you really set up a strong, strong anchor. And then when stuff's going down, you've got something really robust to lean on.
A break the glass moment, right?
Yeah. But those break the glass moments, they sometimes it's a traffic jam. Sometimes it's really big stuff, and sometimes it's just stuff, like the little paper cuts of daily life.
Little paper cuts, but no, it reminds me of one time I was going to, I think Thrive Global area in Huffington had an opening big event in Avery Fisher Hall or someplace in Manhattan. And there was all the big names speaking, and I got in the worst traffic jam. I mean, and every turn I took was the worst possible choice, and talk about the negative spiral. And I'm like, okay, I think this was even before Google Maps even worked. But I'm like, I'm a New Yorker, I've done that before. And then I make the right turn and there's construction. I can't back up, I can't go forward. And I had road rage on
like
the way to a mindfulness
Yeah.
event. It was like, it was crazy, and
Yeah.
I didn't use my anchors or whatever I had. I just lost it. And then, of course, when I got there and I missed half the event, it was the perfect time to walk in, but it was probably the worst road rage I ever had. I could have used an anchor or breath practice or something, but it was pretty ironic though, where I
Oh, I always say to people, if you're in the sort of mindfulness industry, you got to also have a good dose of a good healthy sense of humor, because like I can't live everything I teach, so I have to have like a great sense of humor and a lot of humility, and just like but honestly, like a good sense of humor goes a long way with this stuff. And also, well, I actually, one of the things that I teach in the book is what I call playful curiosity. Like when you're doing this work, when you're training your mind, actually it's very diffusing. Your mind will always try to make everything so serious. It'll judge you for everything you do. Like if you're in a traffic jam and you have a moment of reactivity, and then some part of you is like, oh, this is not very skillful or helpful, let me try something else. But then the mind will come in the back door again and be like, you going to a mindfulness event, what kind of an idiot are you? And just start the whole tirade and take you right back into mental reactivity again. So things like an attitude of playful curiosity, where you can go, oh, look, my mind is really hot under the bonnet today. And to be able to
what was that? Hot under the bonnet?
Wait, is that how you use that term? Or
It works. I mean,
using
it worked.
hot under the bonnet, maybe I might not be using that word, that
In
phrase in the right context.
in Brooklyn terms, I would say I'm losing my bleep. I'm just
Yeah.
hot under the bonnet. Is that the right
I could have
context?
another meaning.
It works. Okay. All
Tell us
right.
in the chat,
Fair enough.
in the chat window. I'm not sure. But what I do know is that using a quality like playful curiosity in that moment can be very diffusing for the mind, right? Because your mind is kind of, this is so serious.
And I don't think I breathed for 20 minutes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I've been there. I know exactly what you mean. We've all been there. So in those moments.
So what would playful curiosity look like? Oh my God, God plan, people plan, and God, God laughs. So
Well, what you can do, so one of the tricks because what we basically want to do when your mind is doing things that are not skillful or helpful, this is what we always want to look out for, right? Okay, it's happening, and we're not always in control of what the mind is doing. We're always, all of us, unless, I don't know, maybe there's people who don't have this. I'm not one of them. When you have moments when your mind is doing things that are not skillful or helpful, you recognize that, right? So this is that step, recognize and regulate. And then one of the things that you can do to regulate, there's a whole suite of tools we can use, but one of them would be, so we want to diffuse. Essentially, we want to diffuse and unhook from any unhelpful thoughts and emotions. Like one way to do that would be to give what your mind is doing, give it a funny name or a story. You could go, oh, look, Radio Doom and Gloom's playing again. How entertaining. Or the foundational thing that I teach people to do is to say, thanks, mind. Like the first thing to do is go like, thanks, mind. I know that you're just trying to protect me. You're just trying to help. I know that, right? Because we know from evolution, our mind is not our enemy. It's actually just trying to help us survive. But it's a bit, it's like an old record playing from our survival ancestors. It's not very useful or helpful anymore. So with an attitude of playful curiosity towards the mind, almost like you're the wise elder and the mind's like the naughty puppy. Thanks, mind. That's not very useful or helpful. That's one thing you can do, and just smile at the mind, give the little inner guard dog a little pat and just go, thanks, buddy. That's good, but it's not so helpful right now. I'm going to switch.
And you need to, part of the stopping part of it is you need to have presence of mind to take a half a step back or sideways to actually do that. But that's right. A good tool. It's another tool you could have kind of in your toolbox.
You do. If you don't have, that's why inhabiting the present moment, the ability to be mindful, without that, you're not going to have the moment of discernment where you go, oh, I'm having this, I'm in a rage, I'm in a road rage, and this is only causing me stress and suffering. It's not making the traffic go faster. It's not, it's not actually helping. So to have that moment of discernment is to have a moment of choice. And that's powerful, right? Like, I think that's what Viktor Frankl said, there's in that space where we can step back, that's where our power and our freedom lies. So once you can do that, now you have a choice. The power of reactivity is pretty strong. So it's pretty tempting to just go right back in. So usually what we do when we diffuse is we do a diffusion thing. Like we'll say, thanks, mind, thanks for helping. Or we can say, oh, look, Radio Doom and Gloom's playing again. How interesting. Now that's diffusion.
Who's playing again?
Radio Doom and Gloom.
Oh.
Hey, look, Radio Doom and Gloom's playing again.
Yeah, my mother-in-law listens to that all the time.
Yeah, Radio Doom and Gloom. Or you could even sing it. You could start singing what the mind's saying. Just be like, this traffic is so terrible. How awful. My life is so crap. Like,
and just to unhook you for a second. Just to kind of unhook you for a second.
It helps you to get the diffusion. Sometimes when our mind is really like that, when you're talking about like road rage, where we're really in it, sometimes we need to do something quickly that's kind of breaks the pattern. And humor is a really powerful one. And if it's a moment like that, usually we need a second step. We need to change our focus. So the two evidence-based ways to regulate negative thoughts or unhelpful thoughts, I'll call them, is diffusion, the ability to unhook, and redirection. So redirection, you could start focusing on something more life-affirming. Like you could ask yourself a question like, how can I have the most fun in this traffic jam? Or
what instead of what would Jesus do, what would John Kabat-Zinn do, or something like that?
Yeah, exactly. You can ask it like you could ask. That's why questions like that can be powerful to redirect your mental focus. What do I really want in this moment? What would be the most helpful thing? Or what would John Kabat-Zinn do? I would ask that. John is like one of the coolest people I've ever met. So diffusion, redirection. Diffusion, redirection.
Got it. When you mentioned anchoring before, it took a little while, but then I remembered Tony Robbins does a good amount of NLP stuff, and
he does, yeah.
So I walked on hot coals with him 2 or 3 times, long time ago, and so one of the things you do before you walk on the hot coals is to get in an empowered state.
That's right.
And then you make a fist, or you could do whatever, but you make a fist and kind of like a mantra, and it was cool moss, because you're about to walk over the hot coals. So, and that was an anchor, just making the fist. And I don't know if it helps, but I've been using it it's been decades, but it doesn't hurt. I don't know if it really helps, but it definitely, I get a little jolt of, maybe it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, I think Tony teaches like a thing where you do like a power move. Everyone picks their own like power move, like some way of moving their body, or it's different for everyone before they walk that fire. And I think what we know, and I think what Tony knew, like he literally can get people to walk fire when they're in the right state and not get hurt. But the state that you're in emotionally really has an impact on like your perception, the way that you perceive yourself, your ability to like handle a challenge or not handle a challenge, your emotional state. We all know this, when you just got out of bed on a crappy day, or you're sick, or it affects like your whole vision of what reality is, how you treat other people, how you think about yourself. And
He calls it in state, right? Are you in, you get
yeah,
in state, not the
yeah,
state of New Jersey, but no, but
yeah, you get yourself in state. Yeah. So anchoring is there's similarities there, and there's
okay.
some differences. Yeah. So because in some ways there is a lot of similarities, because what we want to do is we want to be able to access the strengths that we have in our deeper nature, and to be able to act with awareness, and act from that strength rather than from struggle. So yeah, like getting in state can also do a similar thing, in that like you're not going to be probably stuck in survival patterns in that moment. You're in a really powerful emotional state. You're not going to be getting probably caught in negative and mental loops. And yeah, so there is a lot of similarities there. Yeah.
Excellent.
It's really encouraging actually, Steve, because one of the things that I see over time, and you've been in this industry a long time too,
Oh yeah.
is that the foundational things haven't changed for thousands of years. Like the Buddha was teaching what Tony Robbins was teaching 2,500 years ago. So there's these practices in Buddhism where they're cultivating joy, and they're cultivating goodwill towards all beings, and they're cultivating courage, and they're talking about how important it is to stay connected to your values, right? So they didn't just teach mindfulness alone. They taught it's very important to live by values. Most religions have taught that. And even in modern mental health education and wisdom teachings, the foundations are pretty solid. Like the same things just keep appearing over and over again. So I'm not reinventing the wheel by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just taking big like concepts that are sometimes feel a bit ambiguous or like hard to get a grip of. And like my job as an educator is to take the best evidence-based stuff from like the scientists and the neuroscientists and the psychologists and the researchers and the wisdom teachers, and like condense that down and try to make it as easy to understand and applicable, and easy to use as possible. So you see Tony's using the same thing, I'm using a similar thing, Buddha's using this similar thing. That's really good news.
Right, right. And the world's evolving, so it's just trying to find a way to extrapolate or filter it to modern times. And so, and not as far back as the Buddha, but John Kabat-Zinn talks about Thoreau, and when he goes to Walden, and
Yes.
and this was 19 early 1900s or 1800s, but he was overwhelmed. There was no cell phones. The bustle of the city was too much for him, so he went to be alone. But that was back before there was a cell phone, or.
Yeah.
So there were definitely what history rhymes or repeats itself or whatever. So this has been great. So what do so how does your book help uh, put this into people's lives?
Yeah, I guess the deep resilience method is, as I said, it's basically once you learn the foundational tools, to be mentally strong, emotionally strong, wise. It's literally something that you can deploy in your life as an on-the-go practice. So you literally go through those 4 steps on the go as it becomes a little bit of a way of being, I guess. And I think for those of us who, I think in your community and my community, the fact that I have a mindfulness community at mindfulness.com, and, you've been doing this for a long time. For those of us who are walking the path of like mindfulness, and we've been we've been on this path for a while, and I'm sure people listening to this have been, I think deep resilience is kind of like the path of embodiment. It's like taking what we sometimes are able to access in meditation, like some of those knowings or insights that we have, and actually like this offers a way, a path of embodiment. So it's accessing, the last part of this framework is all about empowered action. So it's like being able to regulate ourselves and unlock our strengths in really powerful ways, but then actually living it. And it gives very kind of concrete ways to do that, which is something that really excites me in this work.
And how can people find you and find your work?
Yeah, so I'm at MelliO'Brien.com. The book is coming out. Got my first.
Oh, let's see. Beautiful.
So the book is coming out on the 18th of February. And there is going to be a 48-hour sale on the Kindle version of the book for $1. And the reason I'm doing that for 48 hours is because I know loads of people are doing it really tough economically at the moment. And I want these skills to just be as widely accessible to as many people as humanly possible. So if you're interested, just keep an eye out for that. And I will be launching the Deep Resilience online program again in April this year as well. If folks want to.
Very exciting. And Melody asked, will there be an audiobook of it or?
Audiobook is still coming, but yeah, there's audio coming.
Excellent. So, that's all that's in the Melody said, challenges are like puzzles. And well, this was like a great piece to the puzzle. I mean, I learned a lot, and now I really have to read the book. I can't wait for it to come.
Your copy.
All right. I can't wait till it comes out. And so the book is Deep Resilience, a 4-step journey to unshakable inner strength with Melli O'Brien. Thanks everyone who's watching, who's here now, and who's going to watch this in the future. Thanks everyone. Thank you, Melli. That was excellent.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. And I really, really wish everyone the best.
If you like the StreetSmart Wisdom Podcast, we invite you to become a WisdomFeed Plus member. You'll have direct and on-demand access to some of the most compelling and relevant thinkers in the world. And it's all highly curated and designed to help you be your best you. Change your mind, change your life. If you're like the rest of us in this insane world filled with stress and uncertainty, WisdomFeed Plus can help you smile more and stress less. That's exactly why our team has created WisdomFeed Plus, a wonderful community of inspired individuals in search of health, wellness, and a life of abundance. When you become a member, you don't just get access to a broad array of meditations, yoga, qigong, and live events. You become part of an inner movement and a growing community of like-minded people along the WisdomFeed Plus success path. Your personalized journey to a peaceful and satisfied life. Go to surfingthetsunami.com to get started.